Who is that?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro vs. Pro. Back from U.S. Open qualifying, we've got Quail Hollow and this fantastic Wells Fargo Championship to cover. This is going to be a really fun show. How you doing, Justin?
Man, I'm great. I got to play in the first golf tournament in a long time last weekend, even though it was a two-man deal. So it was fun to kind of knock the dust off. And then, I get my own U.S. Open crack in about 8 days. So one more show, but pretty fired up. It's going to be fun. We got a lot to talk about, and I think it's going to be a great show.
15th, you said, right?
Yeah, 15th, Monday the 15th.
It's a little more than 8 days away.
Or 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. Yeah, 2 weeks from today. But
yeah.
one more, 2 weeks.
We will make sure that this whole community that was rallying behind me for the U.S. Open, let's show Justin that exact same energy, because that was really cool. I definitely have to thank all of you. Felt the support. I even had like moments when I was on the course and I'm like 2 hours, I'm like, I better make some birdies or I'm going to hear some shit from people. So,
well, it makes it fun. And you know what the best part is? We could shoot 82 or 62 in it. We're going to come back and have the same conversation. It's golf's really hard, and you gave yourself a chance and made some birdies coming in, and man, you never know. Maybe that alternate spot will get in.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I have like absolutely no clue whatsoever what my chances are of getting in as the first alternate. I don't even know like the ins and outs of exactly how the alternate system works.
So I don't really know that well, because I'm either in or I'm out every year. Like I either win or I finish towards the bottom. But I had a really good friend that was the first alternate one year in Dallas, where I was already in. So we talked, and he sat on the tee forever and never got in. But he was like the fourth alternate going in. And then he was the second alternate on site and the first alternate on site, because a lot of people become alternates and then they don't show up to their site. Right. So if you're obviously the first alternate, if you're the first alternate in your site and you show up, I mean, my one experience of knowing that it happened, the first alternate got in, the second didn't, even though he was technically the fourth alternate. So
for those who aren't familiar with the process, and this will get make it a little bit more clear why I, as the first alternate, don't really know what my situation is going to be. So there are hundreds of local qualifiers around the country. I don't know the exact number, but there are a lot of local qualifiers around the country. All of them feed to sectionals, and then sectionals probably has 15 sites, something like that. Do you remember the exact?
Yeah, 12 to 15.
So whatever it is, you're getting like hundreds of sites, all with their own alternates. Most probably only have one. We had 2 because we had 4 spots available based on our strength of field. But all of them then feed to just 12 to 15 sectionals. So as the first alternate, I'm the first alternate from my site. I don't know what place I'll be like overall, right? And
right.
So
because
like I don't know if I'm an alternate just for my sectional qualifier, which is Woodmont, Maryland, or if I'm an alternate just for the 4 guys who finished ahead of me. So like, let's see.
You'll get a letter that'll say, hey, you've been assigned this site. It may not be that site, but they're going to, like, you might be the 4th alternate at your site, and they'll be like, oh, you could be the 2nd alternate here, and they'll send you to another site that technically gives you a better chance of getting in, right? So it's not like so if you're the first alternate at your site in the U.S. Open, like the sectionals, you have to have somebody withdraw from your site.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Like, yeah. So to everyone watching, this is why it pays to have a really well-connected golf friend, because I'm learning live exactly what my situation is here from Justin. So how perfect is this?
Well, not just a golf friend, but old golf friend. Like he's been around and been through it all.
Very, very experienced in the
Yeah.
world of golf, friend.
I had to get my hair cut today to get all the grays out of it. Like that's
Very
how
nice.
experienced we are.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm really excited for that. But it's funny that we were talking about like you could shoot 82 or 62 and people are gonna, or we're still gonna come back and like enjoy it. For a while, I thought I was maybe a little bit more likely to shoot 82 than the even par that I shot, because I was struggling with my ball striking. Typically, like you and I have talked about our games on here quite a bit, and like for me, if I have maybe two weaknesses around the green and iron play, and then my driving and my putting is just kind of the two things I can always count on, but especially driving. And I was a little bit off with my driver, which like I'll go an entire season sometimes not having a round where I can't drive the ball the way I want to. Like that's just what I do well. And if the rest of my game was anything like that, I'd have a good chance to be on tour. But on this day, I really didn't drive the ball that well early on. And my iron play was just like a complete joke. It was terrible. And I really leaned on my short game and then made a bunch of par saving putts. And so it was kind of funny. It was like, I personally, I felt like, all right, if I continue to drive the ball like this, continue to hit my irons like this, my short game, especially since I hadn't played in so long, can't possibly hold up for this long. Like I better figure this out quickly. But then the next thing you know, like I on my 11th hole, it's a par 5, hit a phenomenal drive. It was my first really good drive of the day. And then I hit a 3-iron like 40 yards right of where I was trying to hit it. Made a really good up and down. And in that, like, and within, I'd say like a 15 to 20 minute span, there were 12 guys under par. And then suddenly there were only 5 guys under par. So as I made that first birdie, the entire field started to come back. Of course, always plays tough year in and year out. And then you get like down the stretch and people are starting to feel that pressure and people make mistakes. And so you kind of always see that trend. And so all of a sudden I realized I had a real chance, and it, like something clicked and I just played really well down the stretch. And that's a really cool feeling. You and I were kind of talking about that right afterwards, that we wish the average golfer knew what that felt like. Just the way you put it, I think was perfect. It's like having your back against the wall and being able to find it in that moment. It was a pretty special round because of it.
And when you're, and it doesn't really even matter what comes of it, right? Mm-hmm. So like you might, and I think I said this to you, like you might get in, you might not get in. It might turn into the greatest story ever, and it might go by the wayside. But when you're the hunter and not the hunted, and you know, it can be really fun. Like the feeling is, and then the hole starts to look huge, and you're just. The other side of it is the opposite feeling, right? You start hitting it out of play and you're being hunted, and like, you know, what that feeling is equally as horrible as the good side is on, you know, on the back. And we felt both sides of it.
How would you define being in the zone as a golfer?
Man, you know, it's so hard. Like, I think that I've only truly felt that way one time. And we played one year Adams Tour event, like 06, playing in Victoria. I ended up losing a playoff, but we were like 12 clear of the field. And we both just kept making birdies on a course where everybody's backing up, and we're just pouring it in. 30 feet, 10 feet, 50 feet, like we're both just going at it. It's probably the only time where I was like, all right, like it just, what's going on?
Yeah.
And now the zone that we get in is only if you have enough Coors Lights and they're having fun playing with your buddies. Like that's the zone. So it's a little bit different, but I think these guys that are so good just don't know the difference. They're sincerely that good. I mean, I think Finau showed it this week of like he was in the zone, like that. There wasn't. I mean, you often talk about nobody wants to be hunted by Rahm, and
Mm-hmm.
Finau was hunted by Rahm, and nobody was beating Finau.
He didn't care at all.
I mean, he was
he didn't.
like,
He
you
didn't
weren't
even
beating
let
me.
Rom like get that close.
Yeah, he was like, you're not beating me. Like,
Yeah,
I'm better this week. So
I think a good way to define it is kind of anytime that you step up to the tee box, you step up to your ball in the fairway, whatever, like you know that there are 100 possible outcomes, more. There are millions of possible outcomes for that shot. But especially like there are neutral outcomes, there are great outcomes, and then of course there are bad outcomes. And I think the best way that I can define being in the zone is it's not just that you don't like think about the bad outcomes that could possibly happen. It's like you know with virtual certainty that you are going to hit a good shot, that you're going to get a good outcome. You're going to execute the swing you want. You're going to get the shot shape you want. You're going to get the result that you want, or at least something close to it. Like you know that your miss is going to be middle of the green instead of at the flag, not way right into a bunker or a dead pull into a bunker or a miss hit ball. And you mentioned earlier that like part of the most fun thing in golf is being the hunter, being in chase mode. And I think being in chase mode really helps you get in the zone because if like in my situation, for example, I knew that I probably needed to get to even par. In fact, I thought even par, probabilistically speaking, was going to give me like a 90% chance of at least getting into a playoff based on everybody else falling. Some of the amateurs ahead of me who ended up finishing 100, they closed the round really, really strong. It was a hell of a performance by all of them. But when you know what you need to do and you know that you need to give yourself birdie opportunities and convert at least one birdie or you have no chance, it doesn't really matter if you like snap hook one and make an 8 or something because it's the exact same thing as only making pars. All that matters is whether or not you get to that number that you have in mind. And so it just helps you like block out all the negative. And for me, I think that's part of what helps me in pressure situations, like really just find the zone when I need it.
and when you've done it enough, when you've been around it enough, you know what number you have to get to, right? I mean, like, you don't always know exactly, but like we would play a practice round at a course for a Monday qualifier, whether it be a tour event or a Corn Ferry event, and we would be like, all right, this week's going to be 6. This week's going to be 8. This week's going to be 4. Like you kind of knew where you stood. And you were talking about like the fun and the emotion of getting going. This is maybe my best story that I could ever tell. So we were playing those big money games, right? I didn't have a lot of money. And one of the guys that backed me, that believed in me before I had anything, was playing in the group in front of us. So we were partners. And we had a bunch of other side games going. And we're on a par 3. The next hole is a par 4 in the tee box. Looks right back at the par 3.
Mm-hmm.
His name's Drew Fish. And I hit my tee shot on the par 3. And as soon as I hit it, I knew it was good. And I yelled, "Talk to it, Drew." And it one hop went in the hole, and he threw his clubs up, rolled around his driver up, rolled it around. And it was literally like, it was one of those stories. I just talked to him for the first time in several months yesterday. So it made me think of the story. He's like, I tell that story every day, at least once a day. And it was, I mean, I could say "talk to it, Drew," and it could end up 1 foot and it'd be a great shot. And I probably would have made the same amount of money. But the fact that it went in was a legendary moment, right? I mean, it was
incredible.
So
yeah.
So we laugh about it. And I mean, and that's kind of the character that I always was on the golf course. Like I kind of always got animated, and especially when I thought that I was playing good enough to beat whoever I was playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw the other side of me where I was quiet, like didn't talk. And, I mean, I was nervous, that my wife even talked me into going to the Q school when we got paired together that year. Like I was pretty much done. And,
I tell people the most nervous I've ever been on a golf course was for the opening tee shot of that qualifier. I felt like I couldn't feel my body, and I was just happy that I didn't whiff the first tee shot.
But yeah, I mean, like I hit it in the water on my second to last hole, and I was like, I got to get it up and down from the drop circle to get in. And I did, and then birdie the last to go from like on the cut to like third, so it didn't matter.
Beautiful.
But The other side, sad news. The guy that caddied for me that day passed away from cancer just a couple months ago. So,
Damn.
I didn't know him that well, but he was like a professional caddy, and like that was a huge week in my life, and that kind of hit home. So, yeah, life's crazy, and you never know what's going to happen. But he helped me to get into a huge moment. Like I said, that when we met and all that. So, yeah, sad news, but I think he's in a better place. Yeah, it's just like I said, crazy world, crazy stuff happens, and we have so many great stories about that week.
The story about your hole-in-one is extra funny to me because the call you made, talk to it. I was playing, I think it was the State Open last year. Maybe not. I can't remember what tournament it was, but we had caddies, and one of the guys called his caddy Boomer, just Boomer. And on one hole, it's a par 3, and I'm looking at my yardage book as he's hitting. So I hear him hit. The ball's in the air for a few seconds, and he goes, "Talk to it, Boomer, talk to it." And so I look up, like thinking it's going to be close. And the ball is like 40 yards left of the green. So it was a sarcastic call. And I just couldn't help but laugh because, like, I expected to look up and see it close to the hole.
Yeah, like have a chance to go in. That's awesome.
It was just so funny. I love guys like that who can just laugh at themselves like during the round. Because I'd be going like, "You idiot. That is not even close."
Yeah. Which it's funny because in my life I was the person that would like cuss myself first, and then I became the guy that would laugh at myself like as I got older. So it's just a revolution of golf and life, and importance of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one other point I want to make around this, or one question I want to ask you about, is when you are playing under pressure, and you can view this as like an entire round that's pressure packed, or just like the last few holes under the most intense pressure. How do you approach that in terms of like, are you trying to calm yourself down, or are you leaning into that adrenaline and trying to feed off of it?
I mean, I race sprint cars on the side. I love adrenaline. Like it's just my thing. So, I mean, I raced the Chili Bowl this year, which is like one of the biggest dirt track races in the world. So I lean into the adrenaline and just feed off of it. And the more adrenaline I have, the better I play. We've talked a long time about, or my wife and I talked about how can I would ever be able to put that adrenaline into just a normal Thursday round in a professional golf tournament, whereas I'm out there relaxed and walking around, and I just never was able to figure out a way to move it all into that same feeling. I love the adrenaline. I love the being nervous. Like I love being nervous. I love that feeling. It's always just been really cool. I mean, it was, like I told you before, it was fun. I've competed for the first time this last Sunday in, 6 or 8 months, and it was fun just to be in the saddle again.
Mm-hmm. I believe it. I think you and I are similar in that way, and we're probably different from most professional golfers, at least most like really successful ones, because I had the hardest time, especially like in college, I would say, because I played soccer, basketball, baseball through high school. I didn't play golf from my high school, and so I was like all about the adrenaline all the time, and it was a long battle for me to learn how to control my intensity and kind of lower it for most of the round, because you can't sustain like the super intense adrenaline filled type just mindset. The round of golf is too long, right? You're out there for 4.5, 5 hours. You'd burn out after like 8 holes or something like that. So that was a battle for me, but I think like that's part of why I do think that I play well under pressure, because as you said, like I'm able to use that adrenaline, get hyper focused because of it, that sort of thing. And I think it really helps me focus more on just the process and less on the results. And then just like having the belief that I'm going to execute the swing that I want. And that's more important than whatever the result is going to have. You like have to separate those two.
It's not even coachable either. You can't tell people that. Like like you either have it or you don't, right? You have that side of you, and there's successful golfers on both sides. I think Spieth would fit into that mindset of like what you and I have, like of like feeding off adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you get the other side of that of, Tiger fit into that, like loves adrenaline. He loves that situation. You get the other, your calm, quiet guys on the other side of that would rather just go about their business and not, I mean, even I would even say Rahm loves adrenaline, like
Yeah.
just by his attitude.
Yeah, 100%. And to be clear, like when I say that I play well under pressure, that's not to say that like this is the perfect approach to golf, because on the flip
Oh,
side, like I've struggled mightily at times getting off to good starts. The third time that I was in US Open sectionals, I started with a quad on a par 5, and I had a ton of family there watching, and they're just like, "All right, so do we watch the next 35 holes or do we just go home?"
they
Cuz
probably should have gone to the bar. They should have gone to the bar until you made the turn for the back 18 and then be
exactly.
like, all right, do we want to
But
watch now or go home?
I think that was like a product of feeling like I had all this adrenaline intensity that I needed to bring down. And so what I've since learned is it's okay to start with that intensity, get into the round, then lower it, and then bring it back once you're kind of down the stretch. But it's been a hard battle, and I wish people knew, like, when you're watching these guys on TV, they've been working at this craft mentally as hard as they have physically, and a lot of them have probably had to learn some really hard lessons, and that's why they're now able to perform at the highest level under the highest pressures.
Especially the guys that, like, I mean, you can kind of throw out a lot of guys in that comment that some of them are just so talented, they don't
Mm-hmm.
feel the same we do, right? They're not
Yeah.
in the same. But yeah, there's a lot of like middle, I don't want to call them middle tier because that's incorrect. They're still top tier players, but middle tier PGA Tour players that they have to harness all the energy and harness their focus and understand golf, and it's a different battle, and most of the time it's a different battle every day.
That's a fantastic point. Yeah, like what works for you one day may not work the next time you're in that similar situation. I think a really great example of like even the best, most talented players in the world having to kind of learn the lessons and figure it out on the go is Scotty Scheffler, right? Like last year before the final round of the Masters, what did he tell us, that he was up the night before like crying to his wife that he didn't believe that he had what it took to get it done on the Masters Sunday, and he overcame that the very next day. Like that's an incredible achievement just to overcome that mental hurdle, let alone everything he accomplished physically on the course that day.
But he's elite, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of different. Like, I mean, he's a top tier, like uncoachable. I mean, not to say that Randy hasn't done a great job with him, but just not like he has it. Whatever
Mhm.
it is that we search for, he has it.
And I think when you see his like very unorthodox swing, you kind of know that, because if he didn't have it, if he didn't have that incredible level of self-belief, there's no way that he wouldn't have changed that by now, right? Like he would have found a way to keep his back foot still if he didn't know with certainty that he could pull off that swing under the most severe pressures.
Well, I mean, I want you to think about, so Randy Smith, obviously a Dallas guy, like that's Scheffler's instructor. He also is the instructor of Justin Leonard. You want to talk about being able to teach two people with two different body builds, with two different golf swings to win majors. Like it's really, really impressive.
Fair.
So like everybody talks about instructors and who to go see and all that. What he's done, like I'd love to understand and be smart enough to know how he did it because they're so different.
All right. So your qualifier is the 15th, 2 weeks from now. Maybe by then I will have a better idea if I am in or not. But we also have the Wells Fargo to talk about. So I think it's time to get into some course fit stuff, because this is my favorite course fit model on tour. And it should be no surprise that the reason for that is all about driving. And so we can take a quick look here at the course fit model. Shout out to George for this phenomenal graphic. Almost 30% to each aspect of driving, both distance off the tee and accuracy. Over 55% of the overall weight for the course fit model this week is off the tee performance. We don't see anything else close to that. Like typically when it crosses the 40% threshold, I'm in here saying, hey, we really got to lean into the guys who are great off the tee this week. Over 55% this week. So guys who are really long off the tee, guys who are super accurate off the tee, stand to take full advantage of that this week. They have an enormous leg up. So first question to you, Justin, what is it about a course do you think that can enhance the predictive power of both distance and accuracy off the tee like Quail Hollow does?
I mean, there's so much that goes into it. I just sent, I should have done this earlier. I sent a text out to see if it's still overseed or not. I failed by not doing that earlier, but hopefully I'll have an answer by the end of the show. I'm such a believer in driving it in general that it just, when you get one like this that just fits the bill even more, I feel like it just gives us a little bit more advantage over the general public, right? So I'm always going to lean on driving distance, total driving over everything. So I think that it's weird because didn't we call this the Webb Simpson Open at one point in our lives? Who's not like
sure didn't.
I mean, like he's not an overly great driver of the golf ball, but like he used to always contend here.
I feel like that's what people have said about the Wyndham, not the Wells Fargo.
He did here too, right? Quail Hollow finished second at least twice.
Okay.
And then we called it the Max. I mean, then it became the Max Homa Open, and then Max won it at a different golf course last year. They're like, oh yeah, well, I'll just win again at a different golf course. So I'll be interested to see his ownership this year because Homa, like, he gets played a lot because he's a previous champion. But I wonder how many people pay attention. They played a different golf course last year because I think Quail was getting ready for the President's Cup.
Yep.
So do you value any, like a guy like Mackenzie Hughes, right? Really good player, President's Cup, struggled at the President's Cup. A really good player, but struggled at the President's Cup. Can he? Is it a golf course thing?
So I was thinking about this earlier because I heard some people like discussing how guys fared in the President's Cup and kind of making decisions based off of that. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on this. My lean is that when you're looking at President's Cup performance, you're probably getting more signal on how the guy handled that pressure, how he fares in match play. Like, remember we were talking about the course fit model for the match play championship, maybe being as much a match play fit as it is a course fit. And so I think you may be getting some misleading results if you're just looking at how guys did at the President's Cup. And so specific to Mackenzie Hughes, like I'm probably a little bit more inclined to just overlook that for him because I don't really care how the guy did in the match play event there. I just care about their course fit. Now, I don't think he's the best course fit, so I'm not necessarily on him this week. But if you ask me about a different guy who pops as a really good course fit, but didn't do particularly well in the President's Cup, I don't really mind that.
I'm kind of torn because I think most of those guys are getting ready for the President's Cup like they're getting ready for a major. I think that's how serious they take it. So I think that there's certain aspects that like the course just doesn't set up for them, and they're trying as hard as they can. They've practiced and worked as hard as they could work. It just, I mean, I'm sure there's maybe a couple that like, but as far as the getting nervous, like I think you're talking about the best players in the world, and obviously they care, but I tend to lean more to either how they're playing at that moment, which golf is hard, or the way that the course sets up for them.
So, for example, though, like when we were referring to the course fit model for the match play, we talked a lot about how putting was really predictive there, and how that signal might be more specific to match play than it is to what is that, Austin Country Club.
Yeah.
Whereas here at Quail Hollow, like, so if putting is really predictive because of the match play conditions, but now you're getting to a stroke play event and putting, as we see, we get that graphic back up. So we see like stroke team putting is barely important at all here, way down from its typical level of predictive value. Then that's like one very clear and obvious way that performance in the President's Cup might differ from performance here in this event.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to look too much into it, but if I get down to like a certain 2 players, 3 players, like I'm going to lean away from a guy that struggled here that I know that's going to struggle here. But we also have plenty of history prior to last
Mhm.
year of knowing kind of what's going on.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people fall into how they finished in those events instead of looking at their stats for those events. So I think that's a huge deal.
hmm Yeah, and like someone could be in contention for 3 days and then really struggle the last day. And what gives you the better signal? The fact that he was in contention, or the fact that he started to fall out of contention and then just like the wheels came off the wagon?
Yeah,
I would lean
exactly.
towards the first.
And not just that, but like if they striped it and just didn't make anything all
Yep.
week or whatever, like how
Mhm.
they finish doesn't really matter. It's more about their stats for that week and how they played.
Agree completely. So let's talk about some guys who really stand out as great fits for this course. No surprise, I'm going to go right to Cameron Young, the guy with the best history here from a true strokes gained perspective is Rory McIlroy. What is Rory phenomenal at? Driving the ball. He's as long and accurate off the tee as anybody. Cameron Young is in the exact same boat. Josh Culp made the comment in our chat today, something along the lines of like, the flow chart is simple. Has Rory been successful here in the past? Okay, play Cam Young. And I think like as much as that is said in jest, there's a lot of truth to it because they have very similar games. Of course, all of it starting with the fact that they are elite off the tee in both ways.
How I mean, in my opinion, how has Tony Finau not worked his way into the exact same category for elite off the tee as Cam Young and Rory?
It's interesting. His numbers off the tee aren't that spectacular.
But I
So
mean, if you watch last week, like how many fairways did he miss by 1 foot?
yeah.
Like really good shots, and they bounded into one, not even I would say under 1 foot.
So he gained 1.22 strokes per round off the tee in his win. That was his best performance off the tee since the Farmers Insurance Open back in January. And in that time, so between the Farmers Insurance and this Mexico Open, he'd only gained at least half a stroke off the tee twice. And he hadn't gained more than a tenth of a stroke per round off the tee since the API back at the beginning of March. His off the tee play just hasn't been as consistent as it was previously. Now, it's entirely possible that whatever he found at the Mexico Open is going to translate and he's going to be that consistently good off the tee again. But to answer your question, it's because from the Genesis through the RBC heritage, he just wasn't his typical self off the tee.
And I think that this week he hit more drivers than he usually does, which I think is going to be a huge part of that. I think whoever he's working with needs to go back into saying, "Hey, be aggressive, hit driver as much as you can. It's the best part of your game." And then also he worked on the something that was a little bit odd to me, but makes a lot of sense. And it was his right knee angle, and that was kind of helped him. Whatever clicked. But I think even not even talking about that, I think it's more the fact that like he had so many events where he was hitting irons
Yeah.
and 3 woods or whatever it was off the tee. I think this event, and this is why I loved him so much last week, was that he was going to hit driver on every hole.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. And it's actually something that I was going to bring up when talking about his off the tee performance, because like historically, this is a guy who gains somewhere between 10 to 20 yards per round off the tee. And since the Phoenix Open, like he lost 4 yards, gained 8, gained 5, gained 5, gained 2 yards off the tee per round, and then gained 15 and a half at the Mexico Open. So that's probably exactly what you're talking about. It's just the fact that he was able to hit driver more and wasn't enticed to club down as often, and certainly wasn't forced to club down as often. But it's an interesting discussion there, because when a guy is opting to club down as often as Tony was, now, obviously that's throwing out the holes where everyone in the field has to club down, because then that's going to show up like in distance gained as well. If a player is choosing to club down, it shows up as a decrease in distance. But what is the actual signal there? It's more of an accuracy signal, right? Because he's basically saying, I don't feel confident enough in my accuracy with this club. I'm going to dial it back to give myself a better chance of avoiding the mistake or hitting the fairway, whatever the hole is present, whatever the challenge of the hole being presented is. Which is another like really great point in favor of our strokes gained driving accuracy metric, because that's sort of being informed in that metric. And that's where Tony has struggled most. So if we look at his last 20 rounds, he has gained a little bit over a quarter of a stroke per round with his distance, and he's lost about 0.05 per round with his accuracy. Again, last week he was phenomenal off the tee. Very good chance that he like regains that form, because that's more in line with his long-term form. And I think we're all rooting for Tony to do that anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he's pretty known as being a good guy in the locker room, right? There's nobody that roots against him. I'm pretty positive.
Did you see what he did after his win?
Yeah, caddy for his kid playing the par 3 course. Like,
yeah, it's
both those
so
kids out there.
cool.
Yeah, he played pre-Q one year. He played pre-Q 1 year here in Dallas when I was playing. Like, I mean, I think he's pretty widely known as just one of the better people out there.
100%. Yeah, I don't think Tony's met a person in his life that doesn't like him.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about driving. So Cam Champs showed some form last week. Big on driving this week. Do you think that carries over? I know I'm throwing you a curveball here.
So I'm going to say no, because if you recall the course fit model from last week, like it did show accuracy would be pretty predictive. As the event played out, it was quite clear that distance off the tee was far more important than accuracy. Remember this course fit model, I'll bring it up one more time. Like you see an identical weight to accuracy off the tee as you do distance off the tee. We've talked about this before, almost like there's an interaction here. So being long allows you to be more rewarded for accuracy, and being accurate off the tee allows you to be more rewarded for your distance than those who aren't. And so I'm very clearly looking for guys who are great at both. Champ is fantastic when it comes to distance and quite poor when it comes to his accuracy off the tee.
I just noticed he kind of seemed like he found a little bit of form also with his wedges. Seemed like he had some good shots. It might be just because of the situation. I just thought he was an interesting take that I've seen a lot of from people that I respect that are going to play him. I mean, they're getting them at 2s and 3s, 200 to 300 to 1 each way is like definitely has to be in play at that number. But yeah, so I tend to agree.
That I will agree with completely. I think as an outright bet, as an each way bet, he makes a lot of sense because we see like that type of distribution just fits Champ, where when he plays really well, he's going to have a chance to contend because of how long he is off the tee. Like if he is driving it accurately, his chances just skyrocket, right? Because he's going to be in positions that other guys aren't. He's going to have, we were talking about being in the zone earlier. Like one of the ways to define being in the zone is you are giving yourself birdie opportunities on holes that everybody else is making bogeys on. That's the type of thing that Champ allows himself to do when he's just drilling the ball off the tee and hitting his lines off the tee, because he's going to get wedges when other guys have mid irons and stuff like that. So in terms of the outright market, I'm in complete agreement with you on Champ.
It reminds me of Minwoo Lee at the Players, like same idea, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm surprised you're not all in on Fee now with Champ because of you love to back people that won the week before because nobody else will.
So I didn't say that I'm out on Tony, by the way. And certainly as I do the ownership projections in the next couple of days, if Finau's coming in at like 8% or something like that just because he won, yeah, I'll be on Tony. Don't worry about that. I'm just not singling him out as like a course fit specialist above and beyond what he would typically be in this field for just like his baseline talent level. The way that Cam Young is standing out. I mean, Cam Young is fourth in this field in course fit expected strokes gained. He's probably something like 10th to 12th in baseline strokes gained. So you just get a massive difference there with his course fit.
Yeah, I mean, all makes sense. I'd like to get your opinion too on Rahm sitting out this week. So he plays a non-elevated event last week in Mexico, and then we go to an elevated event, and he decides that he's not going to play. Do you have any opinion on that? Do you think that is there a reason? Do you think it's just a schedule thing? So the way my take on it is he's preparing for the next major, and in his preparation this week off is best for him. Do you have any take?
Yeah, I was thinking number one, there's an element of defending his title. And then number two, I think he very much views himself as sort of as an ambassador of the game to the Spanish speaking part of the world. And like obviously he's from Spain, not Mexico, but I think he feels a connection to that part of the world and wants to like represent Spain and just Spanish speakers all around the globe at that event and just continue to be an ambassador to that part of the world in the game of golf.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but you're probably right. I think that probably has a big deal while he's there. And I would almost go, with Finau being the same thing of why he was playing last week, although he's not taking this week off. I think that, might have something to do with him as well. That's really good. I never thought about it that way, but I guarantee that has merit.
And like you could see in the way the crowd just supported Rahm and obviously loved him and felt super grateful for him showing up to the event, thinking of them in that way. So I think he definitely felt a connection to those fans. And again, like just Spanish speaking countries all across the globe.
Yeah, 100% makes sense. I never thought about it that way. But that definitely is a fair take.
Let's dive into some different price ranges from a DraftKings perspective. Let's start at the top. I'm of the opinion that Rory, from a course fit perspective, is kind of head and shoulders above the rest here. But I'm concerned that his course history is so damn good that everyone's going to want to play him, and he's going to come in at an ownership that is just way too high for my liking. What do you think at the top of the board for you?
100%. I mean, I'm a big first click guy, and I went straight to X because I think that this place fits him. He had, we don't really know a lot about him here, but I think this is a great spot to leverage off a 25% Rory, down to a 10 to 12% X, in my opinion.
I think we're in lockstep there. The next like really interesting range, I think, starts maybe with Spieth and goes all the way down through like Burns and Hatton. So let's say 8,500 to 9,600. A lot of really, really good names in this range. Obviously, Cam Young stands out to me. We've also though have Hovland in this area. Spieth, of course. Homa, who is one here, as you said, and obviously has as much win equity as almost anybody else in the field every time he tees it up. Burns, who you can make the exact same argument for. Like, what are your thoughts in this range? It is just so loaded.
So, like, being a single entry guy and being in on X, I kind of had to throw this range out with but I managed to fit Cam Young in there. I think that I'm in agreement with you that, like, if I have to force somebody in there, I think it's odd that you get like a Fitzpatrick at a higher number than Cam Young because, Yeah, he won, but I mean, what are we, like 3 weeks removed from a 7,800 Matt Fitzpatrick? Like, I mean, what a
Yep.
and I mean, I know he won at Harbor Town, great course fit, a lot of stuff. I just don't I don't understand the pricing in that range. So I kind of had to stick by my guns and be like, all right, I'm in on Cam Young for his driving, and then we'll just move on.
There's an aspect to these elevated events that I think is becoming a little bit stale, honestly, at this point, and that is DraftKings pricing has been almost identical for way too many of these events. And maybe that's just because like the players have continued to be who we think they are, and there's no reason to change the pricing. But like, how many times this year have we said the obvious values are Corey Connors and Keegan Bradley, and I sure do like Siwoo Kim as well in this range, which is exactly the case again this week.
I would agree. It's kind of weird, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like we're talking about names that we go to all the time. I played Xander a bunch because of value. I played Siwoo Kim a bunch of value.
Mhm.
Played Keith Mitchell a ton of value. Once again, 7,800. Let's just go back to it. Shane
And
Lowry, 8,000. Like I mean, or 8,100. Like back in value. Like all these guys, it's exactly the same. Of like, let's
And an
gonna
important point here is it's not like we can say, you know what, I'm sick of playing Keegan Bradley. I will play somebody else instead because like there's a reason we've been playing him. His price didn't move. He's continued to be in good form. He's a great fit for this golf course because he's good off the tee. We have to keep playing him, right? And the same can be said about Siwoo. Taylor Moore is another favorite of mine this week. Connors projects as well as anybody. Like Connors' baseline strokes gain projection basically says that he should be mid to upper 8,000s, not 7,900. And he's one of the most accurate drivers of the golf ball in the entire world. So of course he's going to project well here as well.
Yeah, I mean the other side of that though is like if we switch Justin Thomas and Keith Mitchell and for the same price, one's 1,200 more, we'd be like, all right, Justin Thomas 7,800, like we're gonna play him. It's just the name they're putting there, albeit their stats are the same. It's who they put in that market, and it's really difficult because the PGA Tour seems to be so tiered right now. Elite, above average, average, below average, and then bottom feeders. Like it seems to be the most, and I think you can blame Liv for that a little bit.
I think it's also just because we're seeing so many events with such strong strengths of field. So you don't get the events where it's kind of like everyone's mixed in. There are some really good players. And then like a lot of the mid-tier players in those fields are going to stand out as being really good, high quality players in the field. So I think part of it is just because we're seeing so many of these extremely similar fields.
Yeah, I mean, because they're elevating events or they're not elevated. So they're going to, like the top tier guys are only going to play where the money is.
Mm-hmm. We did skip one name. This was totally my fault for talking right about Keegan and Connors and that crew, but Hovland is somebody that I want to ask you about because in terms of his driving recently, but also just long term, like there are very few players in the world who are better off the tee than he is. In fact, in his last 20 rounds, he's gaining a third of a stroke per round with his distance, quite good, and 3/4 of a stroke per round with his accuracy off the tee. That's phenomenal. So we looked at the course fit model and we saw, okay, around the green play is quite predictive here. But do you think we should just totally overlook that and say Hovland might be able to ball strike this court to death so much that we shouldn't care as much about his short game?
So as soon as I get I wish I had got the text back already, but as soon as I get the text back, if this place is all overseed, I'll be in on Hovland.
That's fair.
If it's grainy Bermuda, I'm going to be out on Hovland. Like there's no in between. I'm not gonna be like half in the middle. If it's Bermuda has taken over, then I'll be 100% out. If it's overseed all the way, then I'm going to be in.
I think that's a really good take. I think it's a very high quality take as far as Hovland goes. I think it's also really dependent on his ownership too, because from a volatility perspective, The only two guys who are over $7,500 on DraftKings with a standard deviation of at least 3 strokes per round are Victor Hovland and Keegan Bradley. So whenever Hovland is low owned, he's worth taking a chance on. When he's popular, that's when you get like, okay, what if he does hit the ball well, but just has a disastrous like 2 or 3 holes with his short game and plays himself completely out of contention or even misses the cut as a result. So you can kind of capitalize on his volatility by just letting the ownership dictate a lot of your lineup decisions in regards to Hovland.
And I'll even go so far as saying that this year is different than most, or than prior. But Keith Mitchell, like if I knew it was all Bermuda, I would be 100% in on Keith Mitchell. Whereas if it's overseed, I wouldn't be as much in. Now, I still would like him, but I wouldn't be as much in.
He's another guy really worth talking about because since the match play, his game has kind of been horrendous. I don't know how much you've noticed this, but
horrendous.
He's not even driving the ball well right now. And oh my God, his iron play is atrocious. His short game has been really bad. I'm a little bit worried that he's taken a step back. I don't know what your thoughts are.
So I think that he's got one thing in mind. How do I get better to win a major? Because I think that he knows he can contend. He knows he belongs. He's kind of got over that hump, so to speak. And I just think that now he's, what do I have to do to win a major? And I think that's what he's working on. And I think he falls in love with the perfect shot instead of the correct shot, whereas before he always hit the correct shot.
He's also talked a lot about that, about like how that was part of the reason why he was performing so well this year, is that he did kind of realize, hey, I give myself such an advantage off the tee and I make enough putts that I don't have to hit the ball super close all the time. I can just hit it to the middle of the green and take pars and know that like I'm going to hit the ball close enough, or I'm going to take enough advantage of the par fives. I'll still make my fair share of birdies, but now I'm going to eliminate all of the bogeys and especially the doubles that used to hurt him so much.
Well, I think that, and then we saw the regression. The regression is probably the fact that he's like, man, this finishing 12th sucks. Like, like he's like, I need to go do something to win. So, I mean, the old Kevin Kisner quote of what 20th pays out a lot of money on the PGA Tour.
Sure does.
So, I mean, I think you'll see him work his way back into understanding and figuring out where he's at. I don't see it as a regression. I see it as an understanding of how he plays golf and what he needs to do. And I think he'll figure it out sooner than later.
I like that take. Last guy, maybe not the last guy, but before we get out of here, we certainly have to talk about our boy Siwoo Kim. Everybody knew that was coming. He stands out as a really good course fit here. Obviously, he's great off the tee, really good around the green player. We kind of saw major signs of mental fatigue from him. Like you and I were texting, I believe it was in the Valero, when he kind of just talked himself into having some really bad holes when he was playing really high quality golf and just like sulking after every single shot. And so after a few events of being more down on him than I had been all season, I'm kind of thinking, okay, maybe he's rested enough and maybe now is when that ascent begins again. So do you have a strong read on Siwoo here? Do you think?
I mean, I know he's been working with Como this week at home. He's just so good, so talented. The problem is, I know he doesn't know what putter he's using. He's not going to know till when he tees off Thursday morning.
So the thing is, like, I don't really care about the putter. It's so strange, honestly, that he has been changing the putter and kind of going back and forth.
It's not a little change. It's from a broomstick to
it's enormous.
I mean, like, it's a full-fledged, like, not even the same motion.
But it's strange to me because it's not like his putting has been a major issue. right? Like his putting has been totally fine. His scores have been much more linked to the volatility of his iron play, for example. Like when he won, he gained 2 strokes per round with his irons. Then he kind of went through a stretch where the irons weren't there. His putter was carrying him for a few events. And then why does he play well with the players? Because he gained 2 strokes per round with his irons again. So yeah, it's kind of an odd situation. I don't really know how to attack it. So my thought might just be bet on the talent, bet on the fact that he's a good course fit and projects as well, if not better than almost everybody around him.
Yeah, I mean, I would never disagree with any of that. I think that the putter switch comes. I mean, I'm guilty of the same thing, right? So you play 18 holes, you hit every green, you hit a lot of shots close, and you shoot 3 under, and you feel like you absolutely dominated that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the highest score you could have shot. You hold 0 putts.
Yeah.
You don't think about how many good putts you hit that lipped out or didn't go in, that you hit on your line. You don't think about all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You think, what failed me today? And it's my putter because I should have shot 9 under and I shot 3 under type of deal. You don't think about the days where you should have shot 78 and you shot 71 because you hold every 5 to 7 footer the whole day.
Very fair. All right, before we get out of here, let's do 2 things. Let's say our favorite 3 guys under 8,000, and then give me 1 or 2 guys cheaper than that. So let's go below 7. I'll kick us off. Under 8,000, I'm going to go Keegan Bradley. I'm going to go Corey Connors, and I think I'm going to give Taylor Moore the edge over Siwoo.
I mean, all great ideas. I love everybody in there. I'm going to go a little bit outside of the lane here and say Ben Griffin is going to play really good this week. I think that's an eye test thing, not a stat thing. And I think that that he's going to round into form. The other one's going to be Gary Woodland, which I can't believe you would not talk about here because this is like the ideal spot for Gary Woodland. So I'm kind of disappointed in you.
Well, last week was the ideal spot for Gary Woodland. This is a good one. I will certainly give you that. It's a good one. I love the way he's driving the ball. His short game, it remains, I think, a major issue, though. And the fact that short games are so predictive here certainly gives me a little bit of concern.
So I think if we had to be under 8,000, it would be Griffin is my long shot in that number, Woodland and Siwoo. I know Shane Lowry is slightly above, but I really like Shane Lowry this week.
I like it. All right. From down below, I'll tell you who really stands out to me, honestly. And I'm going to do the exact same thing that you just did with Lowry. I'm going to go Ben On at 7,100. He's at 0.24 baseline strokes gained, expected strokes gained, course fit perspective, 0.97. So we're basically getting like a 3/4 stroke increase in his projection from a course fit perspective versus just his baseline. That's because he's great off the tee. He has one of the best short games in the world, and the lack of predictive value of putting here really obviously works in his favor. He's one of the worst putters on tour, and he's been that way kind of his whole career. Luke List is projecting well again. I don't know if I can go down that road again. If he's going to do well at a golf course, though, Quail Hollow is certainly one of the most likely. I think my second name down here instead, though, will be Joseph Bramlett. Pretty similar to List, honestly, like very good off the tee, solid iron player, bad with the putter. The biggest difference is whereas Luke List has been good with his short game historically, that part of his game has kind of left him, for lack of a better word, over the last year or so. And Bramlett's around the green play is improving. So I'm going to give Bramlett the edge over List down there.
So if we got to go if we go under there, I think Aaron Rye is a simple decision for me. He's really good, really talented. I want to be ahead of the curve on him because it's coming. I mean, he was like above 8,500 last week or something crazy. Yeah. And now we can get him at 6,800. Like I understand elevated event and the strength of field, but come on. And then there was one more. Oh, Alex Smalley. But he's going to be. I'm only going to play Smalley if it's Bermuda and not overseed.
I like it. For the record, Rye is pretty much neck and neck with Bramlett in course fit expected strokes gained. So I like that call quite a bit. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And reminder, we will be back next week, but let's keep it in our minds anyway. Justin's U.S. Open qualifier is the 15th. So 2 weeks from now, we will wish him a ton of luck, and let's show him a ton of support when that comes around. Thanks one last time for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks, man.